Hello, my name is Rick Houston, and welcome to the Scene Vault Podcast, your source for all things NASCAR history. Presented by Las Vegas Motor Speedway, America's racing showplace.
I remember Monday morning after the 600 where we didn't make the race. The executives from Texaco were in Robert's office, and we had a pretty hard talk. So they're trying to inspect the car at night, and the chassis is pitch black, so you can't see nothing, right? So they were pissed that we had painted the chassis black because, like I said, we had pushed some rules and made it very, very hard for them to measure those rules and police things after the race. Michael had his high days and low days, right, and never could figure it out. In the back of the mind, you always thought it was because of Big E, but you never asked that question. I was in so much pain, didn't know what was wrong with me. I had crawled out of my motorhome and I had fallen down in the middle of the parking lot, and the security guard kicked me. He thought I was a drunk from the casino.
The day NASCAR and all of us associated in any way with NASCAR forget its past, that's the day we don't have any future.
Was being a crew chief something that you had been pursuing actively, or was it just something that evolved over time?
Yeah, just something over time that happened, It just, again, it goes back to the mindset of, the Yankee mentality of you're going to outwork everybody, and I've got a high school education. I didn't go to college. The School of Hard Knocks is irreplaceable in my mind. And in today's world of NASCAR, there's not many crew chiefs in the Cub garage that don't have a college degree anymore. So definitely that breed of the School of Hard Knocks is dying out. But I was very fortunate to be a part of it. But, yeah, I don't know. I've given my life to NASCAR, Rick. This is my 37th year in motorsports. And I'm so fortunate and appreciative, and I don't want to do anything else.
So there were obviously a lot of expectations that went along with the 28 car, given its history. And then as that season progressed, there was a lot of talk about Kenny's focus and not being where it needed to be on the race car. How difficult were those waters to navigate for you?
They were. Kenny was a rookie, and rookies are very impressionable. And sometimes you talk to one person, that's what they go with, and you talk to the next person, that's what they go with. We had went to Charlotte and missed the 600, and that was a big letdown. I remember Monday morning after the 600 where we didn't make the race. The executives from Texaco were in Robert's office, and we had a pretty hard talk, and I was like, I never thought I would be part of something like that, All I thought about was shocks and springs and pit stops, and to be a part of the management from Texaco Haviland flying in and being pissed. And they had every reason to be pissed. I mean, we missed one of the biggest races of the year, and the rev limiter went off on the backstretch, and we chose the wrong gear, and we missed the race. But it was my responsibility, and things were contentious, and then they had to make a change. It didn't work out, and at the end of the year, I was out. And I like I said, the sport is very humbling, and you appreciate everything it gives you, but there's more downtime or low points than there is high points in your career, and it's how you adapt to that. So, when I was released from the 28 car, I mean, it was a dark spot in my career. Where do I go from here? What do I do? Because, you didn't think you'd go from being a car chief to a crew chief back to a car chief. But that's kind of what happened. I had to take a little hiatus and get my shit together and figure out, am I a crew chief person or am I a car chief person? Do I need to go back to being a tire person? What? You just had to do a lot of searching to figure out exactly what I wanted to do. But I never stopped believing in myself and my capabilities and what I could do. So
I'm not going to necessarily ask about particulars or anything, but was his focus something that you noticed being an issue?
He was, when things were good, Kenny was very motivated, and if things didn't go right, which as a rookie in the Cup Series, racing against a lot of these talented drivers, you're going to have bad times, and sometimes your focus gets down a different path. And I've always said that the drivers, they wear the Nomex. They're the ones kissing the babies. They're the ones signing autographs. They're the ones people want to see, and they're going to be there no matter what you do or say. So it's your job to get everybody on your team to line up behind the driver, behind yourself, and go race. Because if they don't line up behind you, you're going to be gone. And sure enough, that Kenny was going through some challenges of the highs and the lows, and obviously I was the guy that couldn't manage that or help Kenny get to a better spot. So ultimately, Robert made a change, and he had every reason to.
You talked about being on hiatus for a little while. What did you do?
Yeah, I worked for different race teams in between, just trying to build my stock back up. And ended up, I went back to work for Robert Yates. I worked for Robert at 3 different times, in my career. So I always had a great relationship with Robert and Doug, but you always understood that, I had left before. I had left twice to go to different places, different organizations, and they released me once. So, I still talk to Doug a lot. And miss Robert tremendously, because he was a huge part of my life, and he gave me opportunity with David Blair to be a crew chief to start my legacy as a crew chief. So 500 races later, I was done as a crew chief.
We lost Kenny in July of the year 2000. What was that like for you personally?
I wasn't there when it happened, but I heard about it quickly, and I was very, very sad, and just you always wanted to understand why. And we were starting to get in that phase of losing drivers, right? Some deaths. We don't need to talk about all that, but just, man, trying to understand of, why are we losing these drivers? Why are they getting hurt? And what can we do to be better? And, that was the thing is, everybody can build a race car. Everybody can hire people, but you only have one race car driver. And if you lose that person, it's detrimental, and not many teams recover from something like that. And losing Kenny that day was just my main initiative was like, all right, let's find out what happened and let's go to work so it doesn't happen to somebody else. And, around that period is when NASCAR got really, really serious about safety, bringing in the soft walls, wearing the hybrid system, the Hans device, better seat mounting, better seat belt positioning. They really started to do a lot of work with the University of Nebraska and with Steve doing a lot of work and just helping the teams understand how to mount the seat properly, how to mount the belts properly, just better educating the people. And that spread quickly, through the garages of how to do things properly, because a lot of people just mounted the seat historically because that's the way they've always done it. So historically it was wrong,
Yeah.
And getting people to change that mentality was tough because back then people didn't want to do things differently. It was their way, the Bob Labonte way, right?
Yeah.
So NASCAR was really stringent of this is the way you got to do things. And, like I said, soft walls came in and race cars got better and people started paying more attention to driver safety because it's hard to replace a driver.
Your first race with Dale Earnhardt Incorporated as Michael Waltrip's crew chief was Richmond in the fall of 2001, just 3 days before 9/11. After everything that had happened that February with Dale and then 9/11, what was it like being a part of that organization in general and with Michael in particular late that year?
Sure. It was, well, for me, I almost didn't take the job. I took the job and I was working at Yates on the 88 car, and I told Robert that I was going to go become a crew chief at DEI. And again, he wasn't happy that I was leaving, but he understood. So they were racing at Darlington, and Steve Meal was Michael's crew chief, filling in. And I was going to be Steve's replacement. And they had a tough race at Darlington. And I'll never forget it. On the radio, Michael and Steve were arguing, right? It just didn't work out, right? So after the race, Michael gets out of the car, and him and Steve are going at it. And Michael grabs Steve by the shirt and picks him up off the ground and starts shaking him. And I'm thinking, holy crap, I'm going to be his crew chief, and this is what I got to deal with, So that ride home from Darlington, I really thought a lot about what I needed to do on Monday morning when I got to the shop, So I got all the guys together. They introduced me as Michael's crew chief and got all the guys together. And I literally told everybody in the shop that day, I'm like, look, Michael's our guy. This is our driver. Michael was there. Michael's our driver, good, bad, indifferent. This is our guy. I'm the crew chief, and you guys can stand in line behind us. And if you want to stand in line, we're going to roll up our sleeves and we're going to go to work and we're going to make Michael win races. If you don't want to do that, get out now. If you have a contract, I'll rip it up. Anybody that doesn't want to be here, get out. And everybody stayed and everybody worked together. And it was our job to make Michael a winner. And I reminded everybody that if we can help Michael Waltrip win races, we're all going to be heroes, And we're very, very fortunate to win races with Michael. 2002 was my first win as a crew chief in Daytona, of all places. We all get the goosebumps when we drive through the tunnel of Daytona in turn 4 and come out. We get the goosebumps. And for me to win my first race at Daytona was just remarkable. But that's a night you will never, ever forget. But that car we won with, Rick's funny story, we had pushed the rules quite a bit, and we had painted the chassis black. It was a night race, so we painted chassis black. And after we won the race, we're in teardown, and the inspectors are like, "We need a flashlight. We can't see under here." And all my guys were like, "Well, here's a flashlight." We had turned the batteries upside down so so the flashlights wouldn't work. So they're trying to inspect the car at night, and the chassis is pitch black, so you can't see nothing, right? So they were pissed that we had painted the chassis black because, like I said, we had pushed some rules and made it very, very hard for them to measure those rules and police things after the race. The following Tuesday, NASCAR sent a rule bulletin out. All cars must be light colored in appearing.
Really?
Yeah. So that's what people always say. You got a reputation of being a cheater, and to me, like I told you earlier, it's not cheating. You're looking for a performance advantage, right? So we had figured out that if we painted this car black and pushed some rules, it'd be really hard to identify some of those things. So we worked in the nature of the rule book, right? It didn't say what color you had to paint your chassis. We just did a lot of things like that. I don't know. I'm weird, I guess, but I always had a rule book no matter where I went. If I was on an airplane, I was reading a rule book. If I was sitting on a toilet, I was always reading a rule book. I mean, whatever it be, I was always trying to find a way. Like, this is the rule book that we live by. And then I've always trying to find things to work on, right? Because I had the mentality that if I'm not working on something, somebody else is, right? So I've always tried to push my guys to be Yankee ingenuity, right? Just work hard, work smart, and go home, right? But always try to find the advantage. So I never considered it cheating unless it was something blatant. But if you worked around the rule book that it wasn't in the rule book and you found an area to work in, we went to work in that area, right? And then if you got caught and they wrote a rule book, changed the rule and wrote a rule about that part, then you did your job, right? So there was stuff that I did that was blatant in my career that I've gotten caught for. Looking back at it, it was totally stupid. But at the time, you get caught up in the moment and you do things because performance, you wear the target on your back as a crew chief. And you have to perform. So sometimes you make decisions that are outside the box, and sometimes you pay the price. And unfortunately, there was one time with Paul Menard, I paid the price heavily for something we did that was blatant and should have never happened. But again, I'm responsible, and I made that decision to go ahead and do that. But there's a lot of things that I bet you there's probably 60, 80 things in the rule book that are written because of the stuff that me and my people, we went to work and worked hard and figured out ways to do things. So
60 to 80 things.
Probably, yeah. In my career, there's a lot of things that we did that hey, don't bring that back. And then next week there's a bulletin in the rule book that things have gotten changed. So I mean that's the world I lived in, and it goes back to the crew chiefs that I worked with. They were always like everyone was different. Like we talked about Birdie and his specialty, and D Hart and others, and 1992, I was fortunate in Daytona when I worked with Birdie. We went to visit Smokey Unit shop in Daytona. One of the guys that worked on Birdie's team the year before had quit Birdie's team, and he went to work for Smokey Unit working in the shop. Well, he invited us all there. And, man, there's so many things in that building that we saw that people don't know about, And the guy had a mind that was remarkable and so creative. And I certainly don't. I'll never live up to Smokey by no means, but I just learned a lot that day. Like, here's the rule book, go to work and figure it out and try to find a performance advantage. And that's the way when I became a crew chief that I just tried to be, use ingenuity to be creative and come up with a better part. And I just pushed my people to do that. And some people think it's called cheating. But like I said, I'm always going to call it performance advantage because that's what I truly believe. Just like today and with a Gen 7 car, right? We have pages and pages of documents of how to build your race car, but they're still seeing crew chiefs suspended. They're still pushing the rules of basically a homologated race car, of how to put it together. You get a 68-page document of how to build a race car. And if you don't use one nut and washer properly, you get in trouble. So I try to be different than everybody. I spend a lot of time reading rule books and trying to find my way around it to be creative. So some people like that, some didn't. But man, we come up with some pretty cool shit in a day.
Is there one that you would like to have back that you would say, okay, that was over the line? You mentioned Paul Menard.
Yeah.
Is the one that you would like to have back?
Probably that one with Paul. We had finished third at Michigan that day, and NASCAR had taken our car back to the tech center as a random. And
did you know that you were?
No, did not know
in
till
trouble?
After the race. Did not know till after the race, and we had a hard time getting through inspection. Basically, we had molested a frame rail. I mean, it's out there in social media. You can find it. But we had molested a frame rail. And at the time, NASCAR had a gauge that went in the right side door of the car that would measure front wheel offset to right rear offset. And they measured a lot of parameters. And we had molested the frame rail. We had a tool that went up in the frame rail and kind of spread the frame rail out to maximize the number. And that was a bad decision on my part. And when my guys had got to the tech center, NASCAR had cut the door off the right side of the race car, so they knew something was up. And when we got there, I wasn't there. My guys had went to do the teardown, and my phone rang. Craig Smokestead, my crew chief, called me up, and he says, "Hey, Darby wants you up here." And I said, "Well, I ain't coming." He goes, "No, you need to get your ass up here now." And I was in welcome, and I knew exactly what it was. And I walked in, and Darby had a cigarette in his mouth. He goes, "What's this?" And I said, "You got me. It's my fault." And then 4-week suspension, $125,000 later, here we are. So
wow.
Yeah, but you live and learn, right? So
Yeah.
Sometimes when you push the rules for performance advantages, sometimes you feel invincible and you do stupid stuff. And that is one thing that totally over the line. And I let Richard down, I let Paul down, I let John Menard down, let a lot of our sponsors down because it was a bad decision and they got a lot of bad ink out of it. And it hurt me as well.
So when you got selected as a random car, did you know that you were in trouble then? Were you like, oh,
I didn't think they would.
Oh no.
No, because NASCAR takes randoms.
Right.
It wasn't like it was something out of the blue. I mean, we just happened to go that time, and yeah, I don't know. I still think that from the time the car got loaded up to the time we got tech center, I think somebody had told them what was going on, but that's just my opinion. But we got there and got caught with our pants down.
Nobody would ever tattle in NASCAR.
No, and that's the thing that sucks. Is some people would rather take the easy way out and just go to the official and say, "Hey, what about this, this, and this? Is it legal?" Where some people would roll their sleeves up and go to work and figure it out. And I was one of those people that just, if I saw something, I went to work, try to figure it out, and try to join you.
Yeah.
So
I do want to ask about Michael, going back to him. What was Michael's mindset? Because he had won the Daytona 500 in 2001, and then the world exploded. Mm-hmm. What was his mindset? Did you have to talk to him about his mindset, or was he?
So when I started at the end of 2000 or 2001 is when I started. Things were going good. We had some good races. Went to Homestead. We finished second, the last race of the year. Lost out to Bill Elliott, and man, things were going okay. When I got to DEI, I didn't fire one person. I didn't come in and start cutting up all the rear clips or front clips. I mean, I basically just took what they had and went to work. And we ended the 2001 season on a good note. 2002 come along, had a good shot to win the Daytona 500. The engine crossmember fell out, and then we finished fourth to Ward Burton. So we started off the season strong. Always knew, could never figure it out, but Michael had his high days and low days, right? And never could figure it out. In the back of the mind, you always thought it was because of Big E, but you never asked that question, Won the Pepsi 400 that year, and things were going well. 2003 started off, won the Daytona 500. We won Talladega that year. I think we left second Pocono, third in points. Jimmy Johnson and Mark Martin were ahead of us. I mean, things were going really, really good. And man, after that second Pocono, we've had like 10 DNFs in a row. And then we won Talladega. And you're just like, what the hell's going on? Never could figure it out. Michael was the type of guy that he never would open up. I mean, you would have conversations with him and go out and drink a beer and have fun, but he never would get personal. And I never could figure it out. And things went down the road, and ended up, we went our separate ways after, I think, 6 years together. And I never could figure out what was wrong. And a few years ago, I got invited to Michael's premiere for his book, the movie that he was in, that he wrote, the book he wrote, in a blink of an eye. And the movie started. I'll never forget it, man, just sitting there, Rick, and just watching that movie. And I started crying. And here's a grown man just crying like a baby. Like, I've never cried like that in my life. And the more I watched that movie, the more I understood why Michael was the way he was. The only way he opened up was through that book and through that movie, but he never did it personally. Never told me that, never told Richie Gilmore that, the people that were close to him. And I walked out of that movie, and I swear I lost 4 pounds because I cried so much, And I walked out, and Michael was standing there, and I gave him a hug, and I said, now I understand. Thank you. And from that day, I had a whole different perspective about Michael Waltrip. And, Ty Norris, Richie Gilmore, myself, we lived those days with Michael, and Michael never opened up to anybody. I mean, it cost his marriage, and Buffy left him, and just, it was a very, very hard time. And it just goes to show that how the relationship that Michael and Dale had, that Michael put everything on the line for Dale, and that really, really affected him. So, if it wasn't for that movie, I probably would have a different opinion about Michael. But after walking out of that movie and hugging Michael, I get it, and he's a genuine person. I wish I could have cracked the egg and had him open up, because I'd probably still be I'd probably been there through the end of DEI, but it just didn't work out, and it took that movie for Michael to open up.
So, 2005, you're with Jeremy Mayfield and Ray Evernham. There are a lot of questions I'd like to ask.
Yes.
Did you ever see any kind of evidence of issues that Jeremy might or might not have been having?
There was things that were different, but you never saw anything happen. You know what I mean? Just there was things like no different than Michael, right? Acting the way he was. Everyone acts different. We all have bad days, good days, and right now you're in a good mood. In 10 minutes, you might be pissed off at the world. So, never saw anything that was noticeable. I try to remember the good times of winning the race in Michigan with Jeremy. That was very special. We ran 53 laps on a tank of fuel where everyone else went 46, and won the race. I mean, that's what means the most to me, and that's what I'll remember about Jeremy, and what drivers did on their personal time is what they do. But I never saw anything that was suspicious. If it would have been, I would have talked with Ray about it, but it was just, it didn't work out for me and Jeremy. We had Kenny Francis was there, Mike Shipler was there, myself, I was a crew chief. We had really good people on that team, but for me, it being a crew chief, it got away from me at Evernham Motorsports, and I had to make a change where I simply asked Ray to get out of my contract because I wasn't happy going to work every day. Like I told you, when I worked for Robert Yates, every day I woke up early, went to work early because I loved working for Robert. And when I worked for Ray, just the culture of everything going on, it just didn't fit me. And I asked Ray to resign from my contract, or be released from my contract, and he did. Sometimes you can tell when things work and when they don't, but I hung out with Jeremy, went to his farm, did a lot of cool stuff. A lot of the guys went out to Jeremy, rode go-karts, did things. And I think if you talk to anybody that worked for Jeremy, I think they'll tell you that they never saw anything that was suspicious. But whatever happened between him and NASCAR, I don't know. It's not my business. And, Jeremy's got his story that he painted, and NASCAR's got theirs, and NASCAR attorneys got their side of it. And, for me, he was genuine. We always went out to dinner. my wife and his wife, and together as a couples, we always did cool things together. And I don't think you're going to hear me say anything bad about Jeremy, because it just didn't work out at Evernham Motorsports, and I don't think all of it could be blamed on Jeremy.
Why was it not a fit for you?
I think just the way it was structured, just Ray was the boss, Sammy John was the general manager type, shop foreman type person, and just the way things went, it didn't. It was just weird. I was just not comfortable, not happy. Kenny Francis was the crew chief prior to me, and with Jeremy, and it didn't work for him. They brought me in to spend time with Jeremy, and like I said, we ran well and won some races. And earlier during that season that I was with Jeremy, I got really sick at Dover. I got diagnosed with Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and I had lost 27 pounds. I was out for like 4 weeks, and just in all that time that I was down, I almost died. It was that bad. I was that close. I was in the infield care center. They shot me up with morphine. I was a mess. And in that downtime, I just realized that I wasn't happy, and it was time for a change. So probably should have manned up and sucked it up, because that was a period of my time when I left Evernham, like, what the hell am I going to do now, and I had to do some stuff that I didn't want to do working for different race teams, but I had to build stock up back in my career, and that's what I had to do. But I should have stuck it out at Ray's, honestly, but sometimes I jumped around a lot in my career. I was easily influenced. Hey, come work for me to do this. And, there was another organization in my ear. Hey, come back to work for me. It was Robbie Yates. And I asked to get out of my contract, and I went back to work for Robert.
So did you work that entire time with Rocky Mountain spotted fever?
No, I got diagnosed. Well, I didn't get diagnosed. I flew to Dover on Thursday. And when I got to Dover...
Were you feeling bad when you flew?
I was feeling bad when I flew.
Okay.
Didn't have COVID back then.
Yeah.
I was feeling bad when I flew, and I got to my motorhome, and I felt terrible. And I'll never forget it, Rick. In the middle of the night, I was asleep, but I was asleep in the middle of the parking lot of the motorhome lot. I was in so much pain, didn't know what was wrong with me. I had crawled out of my motorhome, and I had fallen down in the middle of the parking lot, and the security guard kicked me. He thought I was a drunk from the casino that had got into the Cup garage.
No kidding.
And I was hurting, and he kicked me and woke me up, and he, what the hell are you doing? And it took me a while to come to, and I said, man, I'm not feeling well. So I went back to my motorhome and laid back on the couch, and the next morning, my coach driver, Joe Bender, who just passed away about 4 months ago, he opened the door of the motorhome when he got there, like at 8 o'clock. And when he opened the door, I fell out. I had made it to the door of the motorhome. That's as far as I made it. And I had passed out in the wheel well of the steps into my motorhome. And kind of weird, isn't it? But so Joe's like, man, what's going on? What's going on? I said, man, I'm not feeling good. So he took me over to the infield care center. And it was raining out. So it wasn't much going on, and I didn't know at the time, but Sammy Johns was calling my phone, where you at? Everyone's trying to find me. And the whole time they were calling, I was in the wheel well of my steps to my motorhome. Took me to the infield care center, and Joe's like, man, something's wrong with him. And they, IVs, and they thought I was dehydrated and couldn't figure it out. And they stripped me down in the hospital bed. I was laying in the infield care center. They stripped me down, and they're trying to figure it out. My fever's spiking. My head's like ready to blow up. I didn't know what the hell was going on. I was awake and alert, but I was not right. And they were trying to figure out what the hell was going on, because I was literally sitting there on a table dying, and they didn't know what the hell was wrong. And all these doctors were there looking at me, and this one guy walked in, and he said, what's going on? And they told him what the symptoms were, and he goes, he's got Rocky Mountain spotted fever. And they went out to the helicopter, got some morphine, shot me with morphine and antibiotics, and then that's when I started to recover. But if you look up Rocky Mountain spotted fever, if you go 3 days undiagnosed, basically it takes oxygen out of all your blood is what it does.
Yeah.
And I was on day 3. Wow. And there's times now, honestly, I don't tell many people this, but obviously a lot of people are going to know, but I forget a lot, of things that happened in the past. So I'm doing good at remembering a lot of the stuff we're talking about, but and a lot of it's probably because of what happened that day, with me of having lack of oxygen in my blood. But that was a pretty dark point. I mean, I remember laying in the hospital bed just asking, for forgiveness and just help me get through this. And man, I remember like when they gave me the morphine and antibiotics, things started changing and gotten better. But they flew me home on the airplane that night or Sunday night after the race, and I had lost 27 pounds and I was out of work for 4 weeks.
You'd lost 27 pounds how quickly?
In 3 weeks.
Wow.
In 3 weeks, yep. Even though I was recovering, like I couldn't eat, couldn't do anything, and just basically laid on the couch. I mean, it was bad. So, man, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, it is no joke. It was no joke. And I think I'd got it on Wednesday. I was working in my backyard, and I think I'd got bitten by a tick on Wednesday. Thursday morning, I went to the local doctor, to Quick Care, to get diagnosed. And they thought I had a common cold. They gave me some flu medicine, whatever. And then what happened Thursday night in the parking lot, imagine getting kicked in the ribs by a security guard, thinking thinking you're a drunk from the casino. And then, and then if Joe, probably if my coach driver Joe didn't show up that morning, late at the time he did, I probably wouldn't be good. But crazy, isn't it? Just makes you appreciate life every day. Not many people know that story.
Yeah. Well, that's why we do the podcast.
Right.